I've realised that really I should have retitled it, because Andrew mentioned a minute ago that when you get the opposite effect of something that's expected, it's because you didn't fully understand the system, and that's a chaotic bifurcation. Is that right? So I should have entitled my thesis Chaos and Bifurcations, I think. Yeah, Darrell asked and invited us to write papers, and I thought this is a good opportunity for me to present some of my research, and I'm using you as guinea pigs for my defence, so I will appreciate any constructive criticism. I put this as long-term benefits of learning bioethics. I'll explain. I wanted to teach secondary students bioethics, environmental ethics in particular, because I wanted to enthuse them about the environment. I wanted them to be more passionate and actively engaged in protecting certain species or ecosystems, to develop a love for nature, an affinity for nature. And I thought that bioethics, environmental ethics, was a tough subject when I started learning about it as a postgraduate. I found it intellectually stimulating. It wasn't easy answers. If I times A by B, I get C, which most sciences are like. And I thought that children would enjoy the discussions, there not necessarily being one right answer. So I considered maybe that would increase or change their values. Then I realised that actually it was very difficult to do a PhD on just how's teaching this change values. It's too vague, and I needed something more precise to be able to say, this is what I'm going to do, that's how I'm going to measure it, and this will be the expected outcomes. And one of the people at my university said, well, have you thought about multiple intelligences? So I looked at possibly raising multiple intelligence through the teaching of bioethics related to the environment, and I had to do it in connection to renewable energy. Here's some background. A few years down the line, I haven't found many changes, and so I started thinking, well, what could there have been other benefits to this study? And one of the benefits just occurred to me, maybe they lived more sustainable lives in other ways. Perhaps they recycled more, perhaps they turned lights off, perhaps they didn't use the aircon so much. Some of that was difficult for me to get quantitative data for. I thought, well, there's no point being sustainable without health. Were they living more healthy lifestyles? So I will come to that by the end of this presentation. So my title for the paper is Some Beneficial Effects on the Physical Health and Academic Achievement of Middle Years Secondary School Students through Studying Environmental Ethics. When I started this, there weren't such things as the Sustainable Development Goals. There was the MGDs, the Millennium Development Goals. Now we've got 17. Actually, as I'm a teacher, I'm told never to give kids more than 3 targets because they won't be able to manage them all. But 17 seems, I suppose, quite reasonable. But a lot of these are obviously from my thesis, which is to do with teaching environmental ethics and renewable energy. We've got clean, affordable energy, great. We've got quality education, I'd like to think I can help with that. We've got climate change, life below water, life on land. All of these for sustainability need to be involved pieces. peace and justice. But very high, number 3, if there is a priority in these, is health and well-being. There's no point having sustainability, there's no point having renewable energy if we are living unhealthily. So, although this wasn't my prime objective, it's an interesting, perhaps, long-term benefit. Oops. So I had to first of all develop a course. I used the ideas largely from the UNESCO bioethics curriculum. I wanted to introduce what is ethics, what's philosophy. That's not in the curriculum I taught before in science. Very brief, these were 41-hour lessons. Time the children turned up and got their books ready. It's probably 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Lesson out of one school I used to have. And I needed to make sure they had a reasonable background knowledge in the science of electricity generation and energy use. So there were lessons on energy and electricity. I tried to break it up. All research question was, does teaching or does learning about renewable energy and environmental ethics change values and multiple intelligences in children? I had 3 objectives. The first one was to see if students' attitudes towards renewable energy or a particular technology had changed. The second one was measurable changes in multiple intelligence. And the third one was, did their actions change to fully endorse renewable energy policies? That was a really difficult one to find any evidence for. So I'm going to focus on my second one was, did their multiple intelligences change? Multiple intelligence was developed, there's a theory developed in the 1980s by a chap called Howard Gardner, who rather than just using G as a measure of intelligence or an IQ test, redefined intelligence as being the ability to solve problems and to exercise certain skills. Some people have what we call a gift for music, or high musical intelligence. They can orchestrate, coordinate many instruments together to produce beautiful harmony. Some people are very intelligent linguistically or verbally. I suppose the first 3 are fairly obvious to us: verbal intelligence, linguistic, mathematical, logical intelligence, kinesthetic intelligence, how we use our hands, bodily kinesthetic, how well physically coordinated we are, musical intelligence. The last 3, or possibly 4, that you came up with aren't quite so universally accepted. One was interpersonal. Can we tell what other people are thinking? Can we read other people? Can we connect? Well, are we a good leader perhaps, or a team player? Intrapersonal, how well do we understand ourselves? It's intelligence number 7. And naturalistic. Do we have the ability to see how things work together in a complex system like an ecosystem, or building an English garden that doesn't just like a bunch of random weeds, but has got some order in there as well, possibly order. Later, Howard Gardner came up with an idea of existential intelligence, and he re-qualified it as being half an intelligence. I'm not sure. So I didn't include that. I just looked at the main first 8. So I needed a way to measure that, and one way was using some questionnaires. I looked at environmental sensitivity rather than intelligence, intercultural sensitivity and ethical sensitivity. I found questionnaires that were being statistically validated in a Finnish study, and then I adapted those, made them slightly smaller, made them slightly more relevant, some of them to Thailand. The first 3 questions in this survey, well, this questionnaire, sorry, refer to a love of nature. The next 3 questions refer to a desire to protect or conserve nature. And there was 12 questions, no, the other 3 are related to renewable energy. But I needed to check that this test was reliable or at least repeatable. So I had a control group as well as a test group of students. My control group, I got my control group and my test group to write essays about conservation, and I compared them by calculating the lexical density, how many words they used in a phrase, which is a standard linguistic tool. So I had already compared my control group as being of comparable ability, and I gave them this questionnaire and the multiple intelligence diagnostic assessment scale test, which is called a Midas test as well. The Midas test consisted of 64 questions, 8 for each intelligence, randomly distributed within the test. It was very straightforward. It wasn't a high level assessment. Mine was this. So my control group did the pre-test and they did the post-test. There's a slight increase. This 3 is each of the questions were on a Likert scale, 1 to 5. There's 12 questions, so I took an average of the 12 items. I took an average of the 12, and it gave me a point between 1 and 5 on a Likert scale. I looked at Likert scales, and apparently most statistically reliable, supposed to be 7-point Likert scales. I chose 5. The least reliable and a lot less reliable are 3 and 4. But 5 is shown by many researchers to have a higher response rate from respondents, are more likely to reply to you if it's only a 5. With a 7 scale, people spend a very long time. I'm only teaching 14, 15-year-olds. They're going to find it boring to have to choose those numbers. My Midas test produced no difference in the mean. So I needed to check if this was statistically reliable, and I did a Wilcoxon signed rank test. On Minitab, I know there's alternative statistical systems which are very better to use. I had access to Minitab. Minitab works at 95% confidence level. So this value being larger than 0.05 and this also being larger than 0.05 tells me that there's no statistical difference. In other words, any change can just be attributed to chance. And that's what I'm glad to know about my control group, that over the period of 9 months, the results have stayed fairly consistent, certainly within the 95% confidence level. My test group, however, at this school, this is the collation results I've done for you. The first course was held in 2013-14, and then 2014-15, 2015-16, and that's a mistake, sorry, I didn't say 17, and 2016-17. I had a total of 41 students doing the course in those years. Aggregating all of their results, I can see the sensitivity has increased from 0.32 to 0.34. And the Midas scale, which is the overall aggregated 64 point, has increased from 3.7 to 3.8. So it looks like, oh wow, I've got some improvement in the intelligence. But, yes, the environmental sensitivity scale is below 0.05, so it is statistically different. The Midas scale isn't. But remember that the Midas scale is made up of 8 different intelligences. I was told by my supervisor to summarise, and that's why I've summarised and collated rather than showing raw data. So I thought, well, let's have a look at the pre-test, post-test changes on just the naturalistic intelligence in the Midas scale. So that's naturally changed from 2.9 to 3.8, and lo and behold, it's got a probability value showing that it is significant at 95%, possibly 99.9%. So, assuming that these students did have this increase in intelligence, I thought, well, how else can I check my data? I've used two different intelligence tests, but they're both self-reporting. The students were self-assessing themselves. Not the most reliable. People tend to perhaps, they say that the less informed over-evaluate their abilities, the more informed under-evaluate. Having said that, assuming these students didn't become suddenly very over-informed, they will have over-evaluated themselves twice. So my bias has slightly been removed. But I did want to check this, and the academic year after they did the environmental ethics course, they took IGCSE exams, which are validated by Cambridge University. They are completely unbiased, and they are done by a massive cohort of students around the world. From 2011, before I introduced the course, up until 2015, I was able to get records from our students at my school, which is St Stephen's area. And historically, the sciences had always been scoring lower than the other subjects in school. I don't know why. So you can see that the average for each subject here, and the average for science is less, science is less, science is a lot less, science nearly the same in 2014, but still below. But in 2015, so these students who started the ERE course in 2013-14, following the academic year, they were the first cohort, and then actually their science results were higher than they were in other subjects for the first time. Unfortunately, since then, our school has lost its senior students. The economics within Thailand have encouraged them to go to other schools. So we've got no results for 2016 and 2017 for IGCSEs. So that was based on the average of their percentage scores, which is standardised by Cambridge University. And Another way I can look at this, so to really triangulate my data, I've got my intelligence tests, I've got my IGCSE percentages, but I can also look at what were they predicted to get using CAT scores. CAT stands for Cognitive Ability Tests, which they were given, again, standardised on a very large cohort, and used as a predictor of IGCSE results. They took those, so the 2015 students will have taken those in 2012, 2013, two academic years beforehand. And you can see that yes, there is an increase, but it is definitely the highest in that first cohort. So I've got 3 ways of showing their intelligence increased, and that led to higher academic achievement. I suggest that the reason why their intelligence increased is that within ethics, and if I go back to, I haven't included on here the details of my scheme work, but if I go back to this slide, I'm sure many of you, sorry that's just so many words, but so many of you will be thinking there's so much opportunity there to analyse data, to analyse graphs, to evaluate one argument against another. Some of the students in their own time created websites, so there's creativity in there. There's analysis in practicals that we're able to do in some of these physics or biology type questions. So a lot of the time they were actively using or developing higher order thinking skills, rather than just recalling facts, rather than just perhaps applying it to a new situation. They're using much more difficult and less frequently used skills. I haven't included in my PowerPoint, but I analysed teachers' reports comments about students, and I found that only in biology was the only teacher who was saying students should practice doing evaluation or more analysis. All the other comments were much more, be more organised, turn up more. Very low level comments, very bland comments, must try harder, start revision, without being precise. So there's an argument perhaps through learning environmental ethics. They exercise higher order thinking skills more. The higher order thinking skills raise their intelligences, their ability to solve problems, it's by that definition, and therefore it led to increased academic performance. And you can see that this year, in 2015, biology way up when it's compared to the average biology scores against the average, in other words, the residual scores of all other subjects. Chemistry just above 0. Physics slightly below. But when we go back historically, I think I can go back as far as 2005, and I'll go through these graphs very quickly just not to bore you. 2005, science, well below. 2006, science, well below. 2007, again, science down. Science very down there. 2008, 2009, science down. 2010, we got the idea. So historically, science was doing badly, but for some reason, in 2015, it did well. It coincided with them having studied environmental ethics the year before. The environmental ethics very strongly related to biology topics, very well correlated with biology topics. So my second objective for my PhD, I thought I've got enough data, I've been able to get some quantitative data. And I was able to use some of my quantitative data to help me identify good candidates for in-depth interviews to collect some qualitative data. And I want to use qualitative. I use a mixed methods research methodology. My first objective was to determine whether they were or were not in favour of renewable energy and which sort. I won't focus on that for this presentation. My third one was, were they at least going to live more sustainable lifestyles? So I thought, oh, look at student diaries. I found they didn't write student diaries. I gave them student diaries. For the first couple of lessons, they wrote student entries, and then I said, well, look, can you write these in your own time? And it didn't happen. And I didn't want to influence it by saying, I want to check your diaries every week. So they wrote in stuff, I wanted it realistic. They didn't. And one student wrote about his family getting solar panels, and he had a discussion. Another child wrote about visiting a wind farm, and they talked about getting strawberries there. Nothing to do with renewable energy. And one student did write about explaining to his driver the difference between gasol 91 and gasol 95, which I thought was interesting. He's applying it outside of school. And a few did write websites, which I'd asked them to do, and I was quite surprised. Some of the websites are still active. I don't know if I'll give you a link here. Not very highly in depth. I might have, if you want to know the websites, you're more than welcome. And they obviously copied and pasted stuff off the internet, but they'd done it, and I thought that was interesting. That was nice to see. But it still didn't really demonstrate sustainability. Am I going on? So I looked at, well, have the electricity records in the school changed? And I can't give you the data, I don't want to do that, but I can say that some of the students who followed the course were also on the school council, and they were asked to speak to the school management about suggestions, and they talked about changing the aircon. Some of that's been implemented, and the school electricity bills have indeed dropped by about 2% per year since 2015. It's not massive, but it's something, and when your electricity bills are in millions of bahts, that's quite good. It's a start. The students in 2015 initiated recycling bins within the school, but I interviewed the head teacher, and he said, well, it's all greenwashing, Alex. It's not genuine change. It's tokenistic. There's small things that are easy to do. So I haven't really been able to show that they are living more sustainable lifestyles. Until when I saw the nurse walking down the corridor, I thought, I wonder, do these students, have they become more healthy? And our nurses measure the height and the body weight of the students once a year. I think they might do it twice now, you do it once a year. Body mass index is mass divided by height squared, height divided by height squared, whichever, and it changes as children get older. Here, this green line for boys is healthy. Above the red line is considered obese. Below is underweight. There's been several studies that suggest that students who are obese have less quality sleep, more likely to be bullied at school, more likely to be ostracised. And some studies show that leads to lower academic performance. Some studies have linked it to overeating so-called junk food, and perhaps the higher fat content also might affect neural development in the brain by having the wrong sort of, or the wrong ratio of unsaturated fatty acids than is naturally required in our diet. So I thought I've got good reason to see that perhaps there is a change in the BMI values, and perhaps it's the change in the BMI values that led to the increased academic performance. The graph for girls is basically the same values, slightly higher fat content. Girls naturally have a slightly higher fat content. Biologically, that's an advantage for pregnancy, I guess. Right, now here's the bit I want some help with from you guys. How can I analyse this? So, as well as looking at their BMI values, I looked at how often do they go to the nurse to ask for, I've got an aching elbow, can you help me? So perhaps some emotional help, or genuinely they aren't feeling very well. If my children who studied environmental ethics were more healthy, so we had a total of, in, say the first year for example, the course ran, we had a total of just under 1,300 visits to the nurse. The students in younger than year 10 made most of the visits, no surprise there. The students in year 10, it's year 10 who did the environmental ethics course, was 122. And the year 11, the students older who had never done environmental ethics didn't make as many visits. But the year 10 made 9.4% of the visits, and year 10 represented 16.4% of the students. So they're making a lower percentage. And we can actually see that pattern goes on all the way through. Year 10 tend to make a lower percentage of the visits. So 9.4 and 16, 3.4. That year's an exception, but we only had 4 kids at school that year. And there's one girl whose name was kept on popping up. But 6.1 and 5, 6.6 and 5, slightly lower. As I said, we had no students in year 11 for the last couple of years. But the first year the course ran, year 11 made 6.4%, and they represented 6.4% of the population in the school. The next year, year 11 was a larger group. They represented 12.8% of the children in school. Remember that they had done the environmental ethics, and it seems that they had stayed healthy because they're only making 5.3% of the visits for either emotional or physical support from the nurse. The nurse very often is much more approachable than people like me who are teachers. So kids have a problem, they're going to speak to the nurse. Looking at their BMIs, historically, remember about year 11, year 10 being the students doing ERE. Now this is where I need to look at my paper, this is just a load of numbers and I haven't really analysed. So can I ask you to turn to page 6. If I look at these first few years before the course ran, between 2008 and 2013. We've got this number of students. Well, we can see that there's about only 77% of them. So we've got this number of so-called healthy students with a healthy BMI, and we've got this number of students on roll. That works out as 77% of the students are healthy. For some reason, I don't know why, the younger students tend to have higher BMIs than the older students anyway. Maybe it's when they hit their teens, they get a growing spurt, as they get a bit more active. I'm not sure of why. After this period though, we do find the population rises from 77% being healthy to 88% being healthy. Likewise, year 11, we can see that before the course, 73% were unhealthy. Sorry, were 73% unhealthy. But in this year of the course, they maintained that average of 88, and it's 89% became healthy. I guess I need to put that into a clearer table for people to see. We had 16 out of 18 students, which is 89%, as being healthy as we got in this year. Okay? These years collectively, it's 88% rather than 89%. But it's significant. I haven't done a statistical analysis on that because I'm not quite sure which one to do to achieve that. So it does look like there was health benefits measured in two ways. One, how often do they visit the nurse, and in the other way by looking at their BMI values. And it seems to indicate that they maintained a healthy benefit in subsequent years. So my conclusions for this paper. Learning environmental ethics and renewable energy education requires regular analysis and evaluation, which is higher order thinking skills. So that develops the higher order thinking skills. That related to a statistically shown improvement in naturalistic intelligence. Because of that, student self-confidence improved. There was therefore more healthy students according to their BMI and less students seeking student attention from the nurses. Collectively, that led to improved international examination scores, especially in biology. Thank you very much for listening. I would appreciate any comments, criticisms about the study, and any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Alex.
Any questions?
Any questions for Alex? Would like to start?
It's home time. It's home time. The bell's going to go. Everybody's being quiet. Hi.
I don't have any questions. This is great. I remember I was talking with my friend. I'm studying human rights, and I was talking with my friend, and we had these discussions over our papers and coursework, and realized that one day we wanted to it took me a lot of time to understand what human rights was. And I was introduced to the concept in my previous master's degree, and then I started working, and then during my work, they told me what human rights was and all of that. And after coming here, I realized I wish I knew about it when I was in school. And that's exactly what you're doing now with bioethics and environment. And it's great. It's like a brilliant idea. And also, you come up with so many different methods to analyze them quantitatively, show hard proof that it works. And if this could be replicated in many other fields that we don't have that much knowledge about, and bring such education to a lower level, to like younger people, I think things will work more progressively quickly.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thanks. One thing I noticed, and people observing me teach noticed, that the kids actually generally became much more involved in discussions because human rights came into this. But I haven't defended my thesis yet, so please don't leave this. Yeah, kids were generally very well engaged in discussions and seemed to enjoy thinking about what is right and wrong, what is good and bad, why do it. Surprisingly, a lot of them liked, I called deontology living by rules. I tried to keep it simple for them. But a lot of them originally thought that was, the way to do things. And we looked at the Judeo-Christian Ten Commandments and the precepts of Buddhism, and they really did enjoy talking about, what we've got in common. It was good. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I have a general comment. See, when Ian was presenting here about chaos, he said chaos is part of nature, it's a natural thing. But at the same time, he also mentioned that some chaotic situations in our lifetimes are being created for different reasons, either profit or heuristic stuff like that. It's the same thing with the issue of performance in a classroom situation. I grew up in an environment where we used to grow, or there's even growing rice. And when we were growing the rice, the times whereby, the environment became part of you in terms of beds, in terms of leeches there, all sorts of stuff. And we used to have people in life situations. Very good. They knew all about the environment, the insects, the animals, they could connect organisms with life. But when it came to the situation, a classroom situation, whereby because of the imposition of Western knowledge, which tends to isolate subjects into physics, chemistry, biology, things like that, you find that chaos has been created. Someone who will admire outside, but when it comes to the classroom situation, either because of language, because of the environment, he's totally lost. And these things are not taken into account. This is young people between life and learning are not taken into account in the classroom situation and also in the initial performance. So how do you operate measurement of performance? Where life is being taught you, disciplines, isolated, you can't even connect with your life person.
I think, as I said at the beginning, ideally, I thought if I teach this, the kids will become perfect, they'll start recycling, they'll retain lights off, they'll all love nature, they'll go out and hug trees and adopt an elephant. But it didn't happen, and I knew it wouldn't, I suppose. But I hoped that there'd be somewhere in between the ideal and actually one thing I didn't account for is society has changed. I think I was saying to somebody at lunchtime, I was interviewing the PE teacher as part of my research. Did the kids in years to study, have they been actively participating in sport more? And he said to me, no. First year, your results were on. He said, yes, they did. I remember that group. They were really active. They came on regional events to Pattaya. They came out to Phuket. They went up to Shanghai. He said, but 4 years ago, there wasn't a phone culture where we played on our phones, we interact on our phones. Our life is in our phones. Our kids sit in the minibus. They look out the window. They sit and they're all on headphones and phones. It's dramatically changed. Yes, we had phones 5 years ago, but we use them to send a message or phone people, maybe look up something. maybe take a photo. So I didn't account for that aspect of complexity. It is complex though, and that's why I did try to use so many different methods to verify, corroborate, or triangulate data to show that by measuring BMI and interviewing PE teachers and dorm staff who talked about health and looking at medical records, I had 3 ways to see if there had been improvement in well-being rather than physical just physical health. I used different methods for the academic performance. Does that help?
No, it helps, but I'm trying to say here, we need to look at the whole issue of performance in a way, such a way that before. It's the same thing when you look at the obesity, whatever, all those things, especially in sports. I mean, the issue is more complex in fact. Most people in class become fat over the years, but because of the other issues, and also, I would say, might also become thinner. I started because becoming thin to improve my performance, because other people judge things different. It's a question of beauty, it's also culture becoming similar. So what I'm trying to say, in our performance evaluation in the classroom situation, we must also look at those things in a more sophisticated way than the way we do now.
So I guess I can make that as a recommendation for further work, for further research.
So,
That I take into, I find data on their sleeping patterns, as you said.
yeah, I mean, I remember when we were in Nepal, we were discussing medical doctors there.
Yeah.
That I might take the same disease like you, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
So even the prescription of medicine needs also taking that issue into consideration. It's the same thing when it's dealing with the issue of business studies and human rights. We had a big debate for the time in Sudan on the issue of culture and human rights. Because we also debated, I think it was yesterday when Professor from psychologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing the concept of human rights has also cultural dimension. In other places, abortion is allowed, but here in South Africa, girls at the age of 12 or whatever, they can abort. But here in Thailand, it's not allowed. In other words, South Africa is a human right, but here it's not a human right. So all those dynamics need to be taken into consideration. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Thanks, Alex. Just one thing. Were you measuring, because now Prof was talking about performance of the students, were you monitoring or evaluating the performance of your curriculum on students' health? Or were you measuring the performance of students after having that curriculum, having gone through that curriculum? Do you understand? Were you measuring their well-being?
I was scratching around to find data to show that they live more sustainably. Okay, that having learned about environmental ethics, I wanted to show that they would have adopted more sustainable lifestyles.
Because I just wanted to see, is there any standardized mechanism for evaluating curriculum or health education curriculum or just environmental curriculum anywhere, including Thailand or anywhere else, if there's a standardized method of evaluating these curricula with specific reference to students' health status? Do you understand what I'm asking? If there is somewhere out there a way of evaluating curricula.
No, I have, in my literature review, this idea came at when my research was finished, I was writing up, and I thought, I've got nothing for my third objective. What can I add? And it just came like one of those moments, maybe this will help. I'll find out whether it does or not. So I did some literature research on body mass index and academic achievement, body mass index and stress and then self-esteem and academic achievement. And I did find there is a lot of evidence of that, and it tends to always be, did these students do well in this subject? In fact, the only subject I think that I could find was physics tended for some reason.
And then the second one was keywords in the nurses' records. Thankfully, we were able to give that to you. But to see what keywords, were students coming for. I know you said obesity and things like that, but were there certain keywords that came out during their discussions? Were there students coming for counseling, or were there others?
I didn't analyse for that. I literally did it on how many visits there were and what age group those students were. I didn't look at any of the details because partly for ethical reasons, partly due for lack of time at that stage. That doesn't mean I can't go back and do more. Likewise, I'd like to have linked which particular students performed well rather than just overall numbers.
Yeah.
But at that stage I wasn't given permission to do so. I was given permission just to look at total numbers.
And the last one, sorry, Mike, was that you mentioned towards the end that you had included, belief systems of the students as part of the discussions on environmental ethics.
Yeah.
And that should come across very strongly as, how do we understand the environment? Environment, not necessarily nature or something, our environment. So there are different factors that make up one's environment. So if you can put belief systems in there as well, by there's what do we say, Prof, about where you can appeal to someone's cultural or belief systems regarding the environment. You can appeal to that to make them more willing to look after the environment. So if I attach some sort of significance to elephants because of my spiritual belief, I will look after elephants, or I'll have that. So when I come to class, I feel more confident to talk about elephants and the conservation of that and why, and the scriptures that behind it, or whatever the case might be. If I have a family name that's associated with the environment in some other way, if we have a spiritual practice at home, where we try to become those kind of things. But you did include some of that, so that should come out a little bit more strongly and time as part of someone's environment.
Thank you. Yeah, my PhD is in, I'm doing it in the School of Renewable Energy Technology, and they've tried to steer me away from that, but it is included. I have included bits in my PhD, in my literature review. There's 2 or 3 pages of asked me to edit, which I haven't. But I do think it's really, I agree with you, it is important. What they wanted me to do is make things more quantitative. So I haven't included statistics in that, or quantitative data. I found that most groups within Thailand are Buddhist, for a start. And look, that Buddhism is different in different countries, and how strongly they adhere to their Buddhist principles or practice or faith or belief, how that really makes them, involves them in their daily choices, I haven't assessed. But also in Thailand, one thing that is culturally relevant is they've all learned when they're very young about the former king's sufficiency economy philosophy. And I think in that, one of the pillars of it, one of the assumptions of it is that there's 2 things, knowledge and virtues, or knowledge and morals, now translated into English as, the word morals and virtues are virtually the same in Thai, I think.
What's the religious belief system? Those things go together.
So whereas when we think about virtues, it's very, so they were very willing, as you said, they've already got that predisposition. I mentioned that to seem to be more accepting of virtues, being a good thing, we should be like that. Whereas if I'd run this in Manchester in the UK, I might not have got kids quite saying, yeah, I want to be virtuous as something I'll aspire to in life. They might have been more willing to accept utilitarian ideas of equality. Sorry, thank you very much for the suggestions, and I need to make that more clear.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You mentioned you applied both qualitative and quantitative mixed methods.
Yes.
In this paper, you didn't say the qualitative data analysis. Yes.
There's no qualitative data listening in your paper.
Not in this paper, no.
Yeah.
But you applied mixed method. Both qualitative and quantitative.
This paper is one aspect of the PhD research. So the mixed methods, I used pre-test, post-test data, and through coding analysis of essays to identify which students would be good to have more in-depth interviews with. I also used some of the qualitative analysis to look for specific changes in other students. But if I haven't included in this paper, that's my error that I haven't included interview analysis to support, and thank you for spotting it. I haven't included in some of the details from interviews that corroborated ideas in fitness. I talked about the interview with the PE teacher.
You mentioned the case group and control group. In the comparison case and control, the ratio is how many case and how many control?
How many in the numbers?
Numbers case group, but you also describe the control group also.
The control,
Ratio, how many case control ratio, 1:2, 1:3.
the control group was 14 in the first year, and there was 18 students in the first year of the environmental ethics course running. There was no control group in subsequent years.
No control.
No, there was only a control group in the first year, so all I wanted the control group to do was to show the repeatability of the test, so that they didn't do it one time and get completely low results or high results, and then find out when they did it 6 months later there was a great variation, and that's what that showed, was the test was repeatable. It gave me a benchmark figure perhaps as well, so that students with no input would be at this level. But just because their average came out as 3.0, for example 3.0, I wouldn't necessarily say that the group that came up with a value of 3.3 was 10% more intelligent. So that's what I used the control group. So I think in the first year they were comparable. I also looked at lexical densities. Again, that's in my PhD rather than in this paper. I just included them in here to show that there was a reason to support the fact that the test kids had gained intelligence. And therefore it was interesting to see that there also was a correlation with their improved health.
Yeah, I just want to mention a little bit control, and then with experiment or whatever, in a human character situation. I think sometimes, when I was looking at economics first year, we used to have what we call a max ceremony, an equilibrium analysis, perfect models. And then later on, you inject variables which affect the what? Basic variable models. But we used to criticize, we used to have an Italian professor called Alfred Mudio. He came and questioned this equilibrium analysis because it does not match the perfect situation, especially when it involves the cultural issues and use biological approaches, techniques to analysis. I mean, I'm not looking the service to It's also bringing ethical issues to your brain. That's also sometimes unconscious things unethical. It's also against human rights where you use other children, you use other people, it's like using rats to experiment and then use the medicine for human beings and different ecosystems. Sometimes we need to take this into account. Yeah. I mean, yes, a comment. I'm just saying that you're doing the same stuff. You're experimental, control.
My control is never going to be perfect. I've got 15 children here, and I've got 15 children here. They're not going to be perfectly identical. They're not going to have the same, even if I taught them both the same lessons, there'll be a different conversation going on, there'll be a different distraction, there'll be a different connections made in their minds. It's a control. It's giving me an idea, and it was literally just to show that the test isn't me. It's a self-assessed Likert test on 12 items. It's not rocket science, but it could have produced. On one day they think, oh yeah, definitely no. Liverpool's won the football cup. We're all feeling happy today. We've got ice cream or whatever at lunchtime. Put 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 all the way down the scale. And then the next time they do it, it's been raining and they're wet and they're cold. And the food is very much lunchtime. And their parents can come and pick them up till late or whatever. And it's going to be unreasonable. That's all it showed me. Is that whatever the other conditions, I'm not quite the same. And actually it was valid to 95%. Thank you.
Yeah.
So any more comments, questions?
And I just want to clarity on which one of the questions would you say you were having issues, like getting the data together? You had attitudes to renewable energy.
Yes, my first one is
Attitudes.
Did they endorse, or did they show a particular interest in one, renewable energy, or renewable energy in general? My second one is improvement in intelligence, in multiple intelligences. And the third one is actively support renewable energy policies, or, thankfully, it's got an R on there, or at least show desire to live more sustainable lifestyles. So I've not shown there was no interest in kids like saying, oh yeah, we'll go out and support this government policy of putting others on electricity to generate home.
What would be the implications of that? If students are not showing interest, what are the implications for your study then?
The implication is that it's of benefit. It's a benefit to them academically because they will increase their intelligence. It's showing at least a general acceptance of the value of renewable energy, but it doesn't. What it didn't show is people. What it showed me is that they all said they like the idea of renewable energy. But actually, when the indicators ask you, will they get money out of their pocket and pay for it? Not really. Are they really going to make their lives a little bit less convenient? Thank you. Not really. If they have the choice of going and getting a eco-friendly coffee from Stripe Bucks, they'd rather go to Starbucks.
With no straw.
Yeah, with no plastic straw, in a plastic bag, in a plastic wrapper. Even though they've seen the photos of the turtle with it stuck up their nose and they oh, how sad that is. They'll all say, yeah, we'll stop doing it. But when it comes to going to the local shop, they never, there is no evidence to say they asked, please open the plastic bag. So the implication is, I might have shown an incremental change,
Yeah.
but certainly haven't got a quantum leap.
You know, but I'm
So we
saying,
need to
rethink the curriculum
yeah,
and
The
have a more
approach.
long-term sort of study on this.
and that's one of my recommendations as well for long-term study. Did students actually subsequently get involved in environmental action?
I'll tell you why, because if you're doing anything downstream stuff, it's instead of just looking at the Thailand situation, but trying to see in other countries where this has already shown success, you know, it's mobilizing youth in becoming more environmentally aware based on educational curriculum, that would be, you know, something to boost your paper tremendously. Yeah, I think, anyway, Daryl's got something to do.
I haven't found much on environmental ethics though. I found environmental science
Yeah,
might have temporarily,
yeah.
and that goes in wage, but I haven't found a lot from environmental ethics.
Let's see what Daryl has there.
Okay, I have a few.
Is there any difference in the knowledge level, boys or girls? Is there any different sex difference?
Across gender.
You analyze the
Like that's
boys and girls, any increase the knowledge level?
Did
Boys
that, okay.
or girls? Any situation between the sex difference?
No, I didn't look at that. It's another very good fact. Very good. There's so many other facts I could look, socioeconomic background in more detail. As I said, their sleep, their diet, their fitness activity levels, boys and girls. Yeah, it's really, if I can go back, that would be something good to add in. I think I probably can do that. I have to go back to my raw data, but I can probably do it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So I've got
Making noise, knocking the chairs over, gently disrupting. It's okay.
it's bioethics education. By the way, I want to give you a case, Alex, and you can make a statement about chairs. If you teach people bioethics, and then you have a class and you rearrange all the chairs in the classroom, and then you're going back to another room, and do you think the students who study bioethics should help to put chairs back in order? And the professors of bioethics? I know a particular case quite recently where the only two people left in the room to rearrange the chairs were the host professor and myself, and everybody else, including people with PhDs and masters in bioethics and faculty members, just walked away from the classroom. So,
My question is,
so is this a bioethics or is this common ethics to my dear colleagues and friends?
I think the person who knocks over the chairs should have the decency to pick them up.
Okay.
But which, I remember a few years ago, Darryl, you saying something to me, Alex, you be clear you're not talking about etiquette, confusing etiquette with ethical values. And I think it's very nice to go out of the room and put the chairs back the way they were, but I'm not sure if it's a moral issue. So it's a moral issue, I don't know if it's an ethical
Well, this answers your question about the difference
It's nice
between...
to do with sensitivity, though. Yeah.
So this is the difference between moral and virtual. We talked about the difference between
Moral and-
morals and virtues.
Virtues, yes.
So this is an example.
Yeah.
So where etiquette is also a virtue. So I want to show this on the screen behind you. Asia Pacific Perspectives on Bioethics Education. So you know this book and you've quoted this book.
Yes.
And these are nice, happy little kids. So this is a book published from a conference in 2005 of the work I was doing with Sasagawa Peace Foundation and the UBISAT Institute and UNESCO. And so we have here the contents, and the paper, there's a range of studies that were published, and I want to go in particular to a couple where I tried to look at the evaluation of bioethics education in students I've taught. But just to show, so the knowledge development. So there are studies. So Lindsay Connor, a colleague from Christchurch, is the Dean of Education at University of Canterbury, did a lot of work on bioethics education. Her PhD was in bioethics education from Monash many years ago. And they're trying to see, is there a difference in the number of ideas pre and post? So using keyword analysis of reports is another way. It's qualitative. And I've developed this further later. Now this is interns' perspectives.
Was that bioethics as in including environmental ethics, was it?
Including, yes, environmental ethics. So
The word seems to be defined differently in every single definition.
yeah. So developing case studies is one way of teaching ethics. And for example, if you had exercises in class where students would generate their own cases, this could be a way in the future to develop. It's from medical school, Malaysia. It's a medical school from Japan. Now, engineering ethics, by the way, most engineering schools, there's a requirement to teach engineering ethics in university level in order to get certified as an engineer. So has it been evaluated is another question. I'm going to go to the papers. Now, teaching humanities to students, does that help? The type of materials. But most of these are anecdotal. There's not so much imperative or quantitative. And your challenge was the engineers wanted something quantitative. This week of teaching in Tamil Nadu, using bioethics materials, including environmental and human rights-based and medical issues. In fact, the job is now setting up a bioethics institute with the Tamil Nadu state government in Chennai, but he's been based in Madurai. So this is on environmental ethics. Dr. Selvan Eigen did a lot on environmental ethics, but again,
I think I quoted from him.
Sorry?
I don't recognise that one I quoted from him.
Yep. And then this again is values education. So this links, of course, to human rights and peace education, because in India, the Supreme Court intervened in the education curriculum and said that every school has to teach so many hours on human rights education, and then every school has to teach so many hours on environmental ethics education. So it went above the Ministry of Education in the curriculum content and said, if you want to be a registered, affiliate accredited school, university, you need to teach these subjects. So inside that context, from the early 2000s, we could introduce bioethics in a number of schools under the auspices of human rights and environmental ethics. But the challenge has always been the evaluation. Not many people want to evaluate. These are trials of the Yellow Book, first read in the Yellow Bioethics book that I compiled in the early 2000s. We provided the thousands of books to the Ateneo de Manila High School for boys, and the interesting thing of this is the course is still being taught in bioethics. And in fact, I've met some people, teachers of this, and they didn't even know, or surprised them. I said, that's where it started. They're still teaching, so that was good. It's continuity, and we use these chapters which are familiar. So E is organisms use energy, for example. Sort of biology and education.
I use some of this within the course I developed.
Yeah. Then we did that, of course, in China, there's some chapters from Beijing Normal University's attached high school. I've been teaching bioethics, and in fact, the teacher's just completing a PhD in bioethics now from Peking University through Benoit. So it's somehow they got stimulated to a number of teachers. Okay? And then feedback from teachers is another way of evaluating. So interviews to teachers you could do if it had affected them. Now the evaluation chapter, first one here. Oh no, well this is actually from the trials we did in Tamil Nadu in several schools before you were born, probably. Maybe you were in the school, but you didn't have. So we started these schools in various schools in a Crawley Higher Secondary School. And then this was different subjects. And then, have you heard about it? Would you like to study? Is the subject understandable? Teachers, can you teach it? And different areas, like ethics in driving cars. Can you teach it? And surprisingly, teachers said no, they can't teach ethics of driving cars, which is sort of strange. They're not applying themselves well enough, I think. And then they can look at national schools. So we tried in several public schools, we tried in a few private schools as well. This is an approach to evaluation. So how do we approach? Now look at goals. Now, Alex has looked at this and used this, I think, to debunk some things. But can we look at stages in moral development, classic Kohlberg theories of moral development, and see if we teach something, do we develop better understanding, and then how do we evaluate that? And the answers to most of these studies are, it's been quite difficult to actually get results in countries, including in Asia, that you can really evaluate. The models are not easily accessible. But these stages of moral development, so this stage here is stage 1, stage 2, these are on this is on page 97 of the Perspectives book. So can we measure the stages? So this gives a conceptual framework of how do we measure bioethics, education and development. And similar stages are done in terms of civil education, civics and human rights and others. So do we want people, if you're in stage 1, obedience, then this may be convenient for the society because you may obey. And if you get religious precepts of what is good to be a good person, you may just obey, not question. Could be very convenient. But if you get to questioning, self-interest, then that may be not very good. Conformity, again, do you have law and order approach, human rights? So different stages of thinking. How can we measure it? It is challenging. So that's the idea. So that we would try to measure these. And then I looked at development of goals of bioethics education. So this eventually led to a 2006 statement on the goal, the action plan for teaching of bioethics across Asia Pacific, UNESCO and the BIAS Institute. And so a series of goals were articulated, and can we look at these different goals? And so maybe we can we integrate the use of scientific facts and ethical principles? So how would you develop that? And then, so you can, in your defense, you could link some of these goals from the UNESCO standards, which are these documents, into the assessment. And you might be able to find even if it's in conversations that you have. Now, if you have any student reports, this is another avenue which I'd like you to think about. But it's not easy.
Sorry, student reports, you mean?
Homework reports.
Reports the teachers have made on
Reports to the teachers. Assignments.
Well, I have some.
Yeah.
I have their books.
So this is the next chapter. So I did with a couple of my interns, who are, in fact, several of them now, because respond, she's working in with the Global Compact in the UN headquarters for the last few years, and others. So they, trying to get people to think about what bioethics is.
I call them essays.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
You've got.
Yeah.
I call them reports. So first I looked at criteria. So this one, do we look at both sides of view? Can we look at personal versus other person's views? The use of facts, the use of biocentric ideas, use of utilitarian ideas, principles and keywords, rights, number of ideas. And what's the main idea? So I give some examples, and then I tried, if you remember, this table, for the sake of this discussion, that you can read it. So code numbers, so the summary of student and keywords to follow personal trends. And these are the examples of individual students. So student 432 had 50 classes at university on bioethics. So I followed them, some of them through 4 or 5 years of these are from 15 years of undergraduate report and postgraduate reports.
From 1990-ish.
From 1990 to 2004, from all the years at University of Tsukuba. I kept a copy of every student homework report I ever received.
And then you analysed it?
And then I analyzed every student homework report. And then I did this actually in UNESCO when I came, because I hadn't at the time, and I thought, now I had 15 years of data, it would be interesting. I mean, I anecdotally looked at the reports. So there's a lot of reports. But the interesting are these students who've done multiple classes, because I can follow them. So the student had 10 reports. The student had 10 reports. So both sides of view were percentage. So 60% had both sides of views. Biocentric environment, 50%. This student had 0. And so this was an idea. So there's a lot of data here. But the conclusion, it was somewhat disappointing. But like all knowledge, it's a conclusion and it's a good study, because we have 15 years of reports. But the number of following individuals, quite a variety of individuals over different times. So, for example, do they mention rights? Okay, so these two students, 30% of their reports mention rights. Okay. And some never mentioned rights, even though they had 4 reports or 5 reports. So, for people who were teaching human rights, this might be a very disappointing conclusion, that if you had the reports on students, because human rights came out quite often in bioethics, why did they never mention rights? Principles are keywords, even some of them never mention principles are keywords.
Can I make an observation?
Yes, you can.
I had tables very similar to this in my first draft. I was told to take them out.
Oh.
Because?
Just too much raw data. You wanted summary tables that could then be statistically analysed. I mean, I'm not saying I don't agree. I agree with them. I've had to put them into the appendix, which won't get assessed apparently.
Yeah.
But can you not refer to your appendix and make inferences?
Yes, I have, and that's because I have identified, for example, student 302 and said this change and this change is significant and relevant to highlight my point.
And then you just tie it to gender and tie it to...
Yeah, I can do it.
So this was a whole series of reports, and then I did summary of keyword frequency in different class reports, looking at the whole subject matter. So if I did gene therapy, would I get both sides of view? Now, environmental biocentric views would be 0 because nobody mentioned it. But if I did intrinsic or extrinsic animal ethics, then 86% of students mentioned ecocentric views.
I didn't. I got 0. With ecocentric very little, but I got to see a rise in ecofeminism. The training course.
So this is and so there's lots of data on different studies, but the interesting thing is, how do we measure? And I think also your comment here that you had the supervisors say take the data out, they just want to see a simple model or simple picture, is a little disappointing. We won't.
I forgot this on TV.
Yeah, it's on TV. For me, it's disappointing because I like lots of data. But in our modern simplistic world, they want just some simple notes. Yeah.
I think they want the data to be validated statistically. So the summarised data is okay, and then showing this that it's the reliability of that data, the significance of that data.
No.
But obviously to do the statistical tests, like for the Wilcoxon signed rank, I had to refer to raw data anyway, so so the data's been referred to, but it's been backed up with that statistical analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are measures, but in the end it wasn't very conclusive that bioethics does teach. So it's a bit like your study, that we need other long-term measures of how to teach. Because, we can do all these studies and in the end we don't seem to find too much changing. So this is a challenge. I wonder in human rights education, have you found indicators, Micah, of conclusive indicators that human rights education works or not?
Yeah, but it's exactly the same kind of problem here because, in a number of different ways, we've examined this idea about how do you assess the effectiveness of the classes. And because what maybe like the funders want, they want kind of causal proof. You teach them this, they're going to do that. But often it doesn't work like that. And even then, it's more like a level of correlation. This is taught, and this does happen, but does one cause the other? And this happens. We have we have funding bodies who fund students. They want kind of proof that because we're funding their education, they're going to go out and work on human rights and impact the rights of others. And that happens all the time, but whether it's because they were doing it anyway, or it's because of the education, it's not that clear. We tend to talk about in terms of attribution. We know that because this occurred, in some way in the future, these students are going to do these kinds of things. And we know that in some part, this education contributed to that. So it attributed to it in that way. And that's because, if you're just measuring, say, knowledge, that's quite easy. You can just do those tests, we know that. Even in terms of behaviour, you can measure that. If you're looking at the impact of that education later on in terms of how they act in society and how their society is going to function, there's really no proof you can do that. Because even when you think about, most of us don't litter. Why don't we litter? Is it because of the anti-littering campaigns, because of our education? We ourselves don't even know why we do what we do. And so, at most, you can talk, we tend to talk about in terms of attribution. We know that this does impact in some way, and there are correlations there. But just to try and find proof of that, it's not going to happen.
I hope, when I did my defence, I said it would be ideal, I didn't expect it, but I said it would be ideal if I can remember as a child getting in the car, nobody cared if I sat in the front when I was 4 years old, no seatbelt on.
Yeah.
Now, in the West, not so much here, but in the West, it's such a taboo to not look after your child with a seatbelt in the back seat, in a special padded seat, facing the opposite direction of the traffic. Smoking used to be commonplace, now it's you wouldn't do it in an enclosed space next to other people, or drink driving. So it would be great to get that transition from excessive energy use, dependence on fossil fuels, to become so taboo that it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Why did it happen with drink driving? Why did it happen with cigarettes? Was it the education or was it the tax? Was it the penalties?
Yeah, but I mean, because I'd say that the reason for that, well, that's right, we did that in school. Because, you know, we often kind of go back and think about what we learned at school, university, and that changes later on. And that's one of the challenges with that, with the education, you're looking at those kind of long-term goals, because we just can't. Well, it's just much more challenging to look at that connection between what we learned and the values that we had, and then the impact that it did in terms of behaviour much later.
Thank you. Encouraging.
So you can, in your defense, maybe you can, if people ask you those questions, you can say, well, in the following cases, there's also been ambiguity
Yes.
in the results. And in my future work, thanks to your university, now I have a PhD, I will continue this research over the coming 10 or 20 years to try to further develop the impacts, measuring impacts of environmental education. But in fact, environmental education, environmental ethics education,
Similar, but not the same.
not the same, but they've also been mandated for 30, 40 years, but we actually don't have too much actual study on the efficacy of what it's doing and how effective it is. But on the other hand, we know anecdotally, traditional culture, maybe we didn't destroy the environment so much, maybe, but we don't know. Again, maybe we're just less people. And the idea, now there are some positive things. People don't throw rubbish out of their car very much. In the United States, the fine is $1,000. This might help, but you don't throw rubbish out your car. It's so this may be an impact. But the education also, children will point to recycling. It became normal, and child safety you mentioned. So.
There have been studies in them, and this goes back to like development communication in the 60s and 70s. We had Everett Rogers and the innovation curve and things like that, where they tried to look at behavioural changes and development around things. This is around things like trying to get in development areas people to pick up certain practices, whether it's washing your hands or boiling the water. But much of the science there it's kind of interesting, but it's not that good.
Repeat.
So it's Everett Rogers.
Everett Rogers.
He was writing in the 1960s. The field is called development communication. You had Wilbur Schramm, was another one, SCHRAM or something like that. But they were trying to look at how do you send these messages, how can we send development messages through communication and try and modernise these societies, the terms they were using there. And a lot of it, like Everett Rogers was trying to look at new methods in agriculture in the 1960s. But then he also then started looking at Latin America in terms of what was more kind of health education. But then later on to become around environment as well. But the thing is that it hasn't lasted that much longer because much of the stuff they said hasn't always proved to be true.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alex, for the presentation and discussions. Thank you, everybody.